Hello, Michelle.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing well. Is my picture coming up?
It is.
Perfect.
Although I don't know, I've never seen you in person, so I don't know if this is you. It could be an AI avatar for all we know.
I
No,
don't see me here, but that's okay, as long as you do.
we do.
Okay, good.
And where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Bainbridge Island, Washington.
Oh, beautiful place.
Yeah, it is a lovely day. Yeah,
Yeah, good.
yeah.
Helen's high up in the hills.
I'm high up in the hills, yes. Actually, I'm going right by Banff tomorrow. No, Friday? Friday. I'm off to Calgary.
Mm,
So it's about a
mm.
6 hour trip from where we are.
Okay,
5 to 6 hours.
wonderful.
Yeah.
All right.
So Michelle,
Well,
you're by, sorry, I'm sorry, Michelle, you are by Seattle then.
Yes, half
yes.
an hour by ferry. Yeah,
Yes. Awesome.
Hmm,
yeah.
hmm. Well, welcome. And so, Michelle, how did you hear about the program and what brought you here?
So, I have a friend who has introduced me to your work.
Hmm.
Your group. She was part of the year-long training.
Okay.
Um, and I've been a narrative family therapist for
Um,
30 years and retired and looking to reinvent sort of the way I do
mhm.
my work. And
Okay.
I'm sort of interested playing with the idea of doing it sort of through this medium, through coaching rather than the psychotherapy route. And I'm
Hmm.
trying to figure out that way of making those distinctions when I've been in the groove of the other for so many years
Yeah.
and just trying to figure out how to do it and if to do it that way. So I'm here to just experience kind of the conversation and to see if I try and make that transition or if I sort of stay the course in my narrative therapy groove.
Okay.
So I'm sort of betwixt and between and just very curious and interested in the work in these kind of conversations.
Okay. Um, and just Helen, I know Helen because Helen's done things with this in the past, but what brought you here?
I'm late for treat. I'm thinking, okay, I think I may be ready to do it this time.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you've got um, you taught there's trauma, there's
Yeah.
embodiment, shadow work. So I found that very interesting. Michelle and I were on BC earlier, and we were in the same group, so it worked out good. She said she really enjoyed it. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah, I'm
Okay.
thinking it may be the time now.
All right. So let me just maybe for you, Michelle, just set a little bit of
Yeah.
context. So
Yeah, please.
I developed I wanted to be a therapist when I was younger, but I just thought I'm too whatever something to sit still all day long and listen to people. So and I was felt trapped in this paradigm called therapy.
Mm.
Coaching is probably even worse that way, but still. Um, and but so I used my PhD to create narrative coaching as an kind of an alternative to traditional kind of goal-focused coaching. And I've taught that all over the world, and it's what I'm most known for. But then I
Mm.
started doing a lot of big projects for companies around coaching cultures and well-being and change. And so I developed a second body of work, which was a learning development theory, which is actually called ID, which is actually embedded in narrative coaching, but it's more explicitly about how to help people outside of coaching use this work to develop themselves. And then the third thing that we've done, which is sort of the focus for this particular sort of Q&A session, is that this all is based in one universal pattern of change, and it's all based in a pretty deep spiritual and psychological philosophical philosophy. That's redundant, but you know what I mean. Um,
Mhm.
and and so we're moving away using our own work, moving away from teaching
Mhm.
to three spaces
Mhm.
in which all of the material that you would have gotten in a traditional class are all going to be available to you, but using our own ID work, it'll be available to you in the form you want, when you need it, etc. And the three
Mm,
spaces are to develop yourself.
mm,
So I developed this body of work called the Five Maturities, and it's where all the philosophy sits. It's in everything, but this is the most pure version of it
mm.
because we're recognizing that there's too much obsession about competencies and
Yeah.
not enough work on the mystery of maturity, which is actually more and
Mm,
more important. Uh,
mm,
and then, so we're doing this Guiding Lights retreat as a deep dive into the maturities, but also to Helen's point, I've done work in the past on shadow work. I used to teach that a lot. On some on trauma. I started my life as a grief counselor, and we're using those as languages for thresholds in your own development.
mm,
And so across the retreat, you'll be moving through each of the maturities, but
mm,
also each of these sort of immersion in each of these five, what we think of as the five gates, to understand what has to be healed in order for you to be more mature.
mm,
Um, and then the second space we're doing is around the narrative coaching program, which we're doing this year for the last time, and then starting a pilot for next year when we are going to have an introductory immersion for brand new participants. But most of the time will be spent with our business partner who runs an AI platform to let you do sprints, skill sprints.
mm,
What we find is because, like everything that I do, um, people have to let go of a lot of how they were trained as a coach or a therapist to
yeah.
think about narrative coaching. And if you've done narrative-based work, then you'll understand most of it because it's embedded in Michael White and the whole nine
Yeah.
yards. Um, but it's an opportunity for you to take one of the skills that's sort of intrinsic to narrative coaching and then practice it on a video-based platform.
Mm,
And then the AI is going to give you some feedback on that. And then based on what it's harvested from me, not from LLMs out there, but from me, what would David say if he saw you doing this? And how would we deconstruct that event
mm,
and um, create some
mm,
micro practices for you?
mm,
And so that you can hone in. And so you can do the same 30-day sprint 5 times if like you really were wrestling with something that was big in your practice, or you can move around as you see fit. It's all about developing your mastery.
mm,
The first one's about more maturity, that one's more about mastery. And then the third one is taking our integrative development program, which is how do I engage clients in new ways? I mean, so part of the search I imagine you're on is who do I want to help? What do I want to help them do? Where would I find them? What would they be looking for that they would find me? Um, and so we're bringing our graduates together to help them learn how to integrate this work into their practice, into themselves, but also then how to develop projects and engage clients
mm,
using this work. Yeah, so those are the three spaces. We're launching our pilot to the first two, the second and third now in July, and then we'll do a pilot of the narrative coaching one in October, and then we'll
mm.
launch everything in earnest in January.
And the everything in January would be all three of these spaces in
Yes,
one
yes.
training.
Well,
Awesome.
in one space, not the three, there's three spaces under one umbrella.
Right.
And we're still working on the business model, but in essence, we wouldn't want people running around to all of them because it gets very confusing to them. But we're going to create different ways of participating, but you can
Mm,
decide to focus on one of these three areas, but all the material from everything will be in one central space for people to access. Uh,
yeah. Okay.
so yeah, and then
Okay.
that allows me then to train more people to support that space
Yeah.
and mentor them so I can go back to writing more books and finding and creating new resources and but other
Mm,
people will start to take the work forward. But
love that.
yeah,
It's very comprehensive. A lot of thought has gone into that. I can
there
tell.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah. And what we're finding is again, coaches particularly consume a lot of information, a lot of programs,
Yeah.
but they may or may not actually grow as humans.
Yeah.
And they may not have enough. And a lot of, I mean, I've been in coaching for nearly 30 years, And the world that I started coaching in is nowhere near the world we live in now. And
Yeah.
these single silo practices like therapy and coaching are not enough. And we need something else. And so we've got a model for that. And so each of
Mm,
these spaces contributes to the end state of what I
mm.
think is the new practitioner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ambitious and really interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what we're finding is that people like yourself that have long, rich careers,
Yeah.
but are kind of there's got to be something else. I'm not quite sure
I,
what it is. We're getting a lot of those people that don't really have anywhere else to go because they've either maxed out in their own profession or they're
yeah.
fatigued of it or they want to do something different. And so we see it as a attractor for a lot of kindred spirits like myself who don't really belong to anything because we don't quite fit and
Mm,
often in traditional ways. So yeah,
mm. Wow.
yeah.
I don't want to dominate. I have so many
Okay.
questions, but
Well,
this,
we had some issues that one of our team members got ill and had to drop off the team, so we were a bit
mm,
behind in getting announcements out for these sessions. So we expect the early ones will have few, and they'll have everybody will come to the latter ones. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
and so what
So,
would go ahead, Michelle?
so
How would
David,
yeah.
what is it, the length of it again? It goes, starts when, ends when, and
Yeah, so there's actually a slide for this, but it starts in the
Okay.
middle of July and goes through the middle of December.
okay.
When we do it in the new year, it'll be a little bit longer. It'll still have the exact same content you'll get this time. It's just because we have like 43, no, about 40 people in the current Guiding Lights retreat, and they're finishing. Well, they finished this week, and we have a celebration online next week. And so we had to kind of wait for them to get done before we could start the next cohort. So yeah.
And so there will be one as well, a cohort in the new year, like starting January of
Yes.
2026.
Yeah, so
Okay.
from going forward, there'll be one, and this is where I'm going to spend most of my time. We're going to start a cohort twice a year going forward. And then the other thing we're starting next year is uh, so Helen might know this, Michelle, you wouldn't, but so I had long COVID for 2+ years and it's come back
Mm,
some. And so it's kind of really cut into my writing. And so, but now that I'm getting better again, I want to go back to write.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and so one of the things I want to do is assemble a group of people with some level of expertise and certainly even as an amateur in one of the five gates. So it'd be
mm,
grief, trauma, attachment theory, grief, attachment theory, trauma, embodiment, and shadow work. And I want to have a study group for a year and say, based on our philosophy, what do we think about these things? And my hypothesis is to do all of those simultaneously is way too much, but I
mm,
think because of the way this neatly fit in this year, we observed that I'm going to create a process that incorporates all five into one process.
mm.
And yeah, I'm getting inklings of that now, and I want a study group to kind of help me explore that,
Yeah.
and then eventually we write a book together, or whatever we decide to do. So
Mm.
yeah.
And that would be the 6 months.
So that would be the start. But this will be separate from the retreat. This will be a group of people that will meet in a more like online Google Doc kind of space where we're, sharing expertise, we're sharing ideas, we're, bringing perspectives. I'm,
Mm.
I'm imagining putting up my hypotheses and then having people work
Yeah.
with that and challenge that and enrich that and kind of
Mm.
just see what wants to emerge. And I don't think the world's awash in a gazillion methodologies, but I don't
I know.
think we have quite what we need yet. So
Mm. Mm.
explore, yeah, because everything gets labeled. It's trauma
Yeah.
this or it's grief that, or I thought,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Too many intersections
way too
to
many. And so
put that.
then,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, if people are struggling, they have to either put themselves in a box, which sometimes can be helpful, but then they get over-identified with the box. And I just think there's part of it's just being human in a very messy
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so
I'm really drawn to the in my career work, I was doing a lot of training. I was working within academic settings, but a lot of person of the therapist
okay,
kind of
wow,
work. So it sounds like that's perhaps got some resonance with this idea of sort of healing yourself or being a part of the
yeah,
process of your own. work. It's not just focused out, it's focused in.
Yeah, so the retreat's all inward focused. We do
Yep.
create some invitations to reflect on what would this mean for you externally, but um, and the grounding is much more in Taoism than anything else. So it takes more of a
Mm,
cyclical approach as opposed to a linear or judgmental approach. And
mm,
so we just keep circling. Each week we circle the same thing, but through a different lens, and so that's sort of a layered immersion
yeah.
in what you're. And so, yeah, it's been fascinating to watch people sort of, you would see this in a great therapy session where somebody goes, I was over there,
Mm,
I'm over here now.
mm,
How did that happen? I don't remember.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
have a lot of that in the retreat, people reporting
Yeah.
because we take a much more of a marination approach as opposed to a kind of a gestalt or something where it's like
Yeah.
in your,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it reminds me of the reflecting team process when it's
Hmm.
done really beautifully. It's that
Yeah,
like multiple perspectives just kind of
yeah,
in the space.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it feels kind of like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It's really good.
Hmm. Trying to see what I have these slides, but
Mm.
um, would you like to know anything about the five maturities? What would
I
be
would
helpful?
love to know about those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh. All right. And Helen, what would you like to so we can,
I would like to review the five maturities for
okay.
sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
so no, that
Well,
that works great.
let's explore this. Um, there we go. There we go. So here's let's go back up here. Um, so I know I'm breaking all the rules by talking while you're looking at a slide, but I'm going to do that anyways. Because it's too late.
Yeah.
So I just kept railing against like people like ICF and their competency models and trying to say that didn't really relate. And I always wanted to start a guild and have apprenticeships and really think more seriously about how do you actually mature adults um, and so I was through an association with the Institute of Coaching at Harvard. Jeff's like, well, you should write some more about that. I used to write a lot about that stuff. Write some more. And so I was writing during long COVID, so it became my therapy because I'd wake up in the morning and have to read what I wrote the day before because I couldn't remember any of it. I
Mm,
had to reread myself every day for 9 months.
mm,
And it became my own muse, but also my own healer. And the gist of it was that competency is just one of five masteries,
mm,
and each mastery is built particularly on one maturity. I mean, it's not that simple in real life, but it's a really clear, I think, distinction. And that and I find in the West, too much focus on behavior
mm,
and sort of acontextual thinking about how do people do things. And so
mm,
I started to realize, that an example I often give is that, maybe you're learning how to speak more directly to people, like express your anger or make a request or give hard feedback. And so you're kind of in that and you're really building up that competency. And so if someone were to measure you, they say, yes, you've done really well at that competency. But if you've got low maturity or EQ or whatever, it's not helpful because you don't want to use that to a 3-year-old child, right? You'll scare them.
mm,
So part of it's having the maturity. Oh, this person is not going to respond, or this culture or this context is the wrong context for me to be like for me as a white man. I'm always very conscious about the ways in which people are projecting onto me, I'm onto them, and so it's this discernment. And then the last piece was I developed a model some years ago in working with the leadership development team at Google, summarizing all the research on performance and coming down to five variables. So I matched all these up, which you'll see. So this is an activity you'll do in the retreat as some five lenses on your own issue.
mm,
But let me just put them here.
mm,
Um, so personal maturity is basically what you can access in yourself. It's the ability to self-regulate, the ability to be self-aware, to be able to be mentalize, all that. And the more that you can do that, the more robust your mindset is, and the more capacity you have to show up. So this is a reflective exercise where we ask, and you'll do this if you come to the retreat, but we ask people to reflect on something that didn't go so well.
Mm.
What do you wish you had been able to access in yourself that you couldn't? Oh, I get so caught up in my emotions, I stopped breathing. I wish I could have just kept breathing. And all these little pieces start to add up to a gestalt of a way of being that was absent at the time that causes this thing to not go well. And it stopped me at any point along the way. So the second one is I think of as spiritual maturity.
Mm.
Um, and and for a while I was calling it relational maturity, but then people took that too literally and thought only about couples or coach client or something. And I see spiritual in a non-dogmatic way as a many more layers of seeing. And this is so the more mature you are, the more you can allow yourself to see. And so I think when I used to do demos, I used to go to Australia. I lived in Australia for some time and traveled there a lot. And I would coach using narrative coaching, but people were confused. Well, you're not saying anything. Well, I'm not getting paid to say things. I'm paid to be here. And then how did you know to ask her that? Because it was right there. Well, we didn't see that, and she didn't say that. And I said, because I'm not necessarily a better coach than you are, although I might have been, but more importantly, I see more than you do because you're looking for what should I do next as a coach?
Yeah.
And I'm open to the entire field as it's unfolding.
Mm.
So again, we ask you in the practice, what do you wish you had seen or seen more clearly? Like maybe your own responsibility for what happened.
Mm.
And each of these kind of builds. Uh, uh, so this is
Mm.
the one we most recognize. This is where we spend most of our training time. This has to do with our professional maturity. And this has to do with the basics of a process. So like how to wash dishes in the kitchen or how to wait tables or how to engage clients as a coach. But this more competency work doesn't make you better beyond a certain point. And so that's where the model falls down. And so this is a reflection. What do I wish I had known how to do? Like maybe you feel uncomfortable inserting yourself, but what you wish you'd known how to do was how do I interrupt somebody and have them not feel um,
Mm.
judged, right?
Mm.
And so we might just practice, and I might say, I'm going to talk to you right now. I want you to interrupt me.
Mm.
Like, ooh. And then we're going to discover the other two pieces that get in the way of them being willing to interrupt.
Mm.
And so this basically becomes a map for your own development. Last two. So this has been part of what attracted me to creating narrative coaching was I felt like coaching and in some ways therapy. So therapy is
Mm.
blessed because it has social work as a companion in a way,
Mm.
particularly like for families and things like that. Coaching doesn't have that. And so what I found was that coaching wedded itself to um, individual psychology to much, they absorbed the therapeutic hour as a frame. They started coaching psychology, but there was almost no attention to the environment.
Mm.
And my first degree was in sociology, and I thought it's all environment in
Mm.
terms of where they came from, what shaped those narratives, but also the environment they're going back to. And so I felt a lot of coaches were quite naive um, and didn't really appreciate this. So
Mm.
social maturity is then gives you the capability to wisely use your competencies and to use them well. Um, and
Mm.
kind of which of your competencies would be best used right now, and why do you think that? Um, and so this one for me is particularly important. And this is where maturity starts to really show up in a big way. And then the
Mm.
last one, then we can get some questions. That one of the things, another thing that makes narrative coaching unique is we focus a lot on identity. That's from which everything comes. And so this one is who I wish I could have been, which is then the culmination of all of this. And we think of it as contextual maturity. You can be in an ever-shifting context in a coaching session and continue to morph yourself and improvise to be what the person or the conversation or the moment needs you to be. And for me, this leads to not only a shift in your identity as a practitioner, but it also leads to greater credibility, both in terms of you can explain more of what's actually going on and why you did what you did because you're live in it. You're agile in response to what's happening, so you're much closer to what's going on. But it's also credible because I find it works way better. Because you're now meeting the client exactly where they are, not where you think they should be based on your coaching model.
Mm.
Yeah. So those are the five maturities. They each match to one mastery, and they're each matched to one of the I-beam elements, which then gives you sort of an orientation kind of around you, kind of where do I need to pay attention?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
David,
Yes.
in the social maturity, what comes up for me is, if I'm coaching someone from a different part of the world, I think of what I wish I had done differently, given that they, if they're in the East versus the West, they think differently,
Yes.
and also our cultures are different. And so it's
Yes.
being more to what comes up for me around that social maturity is being more attuned to who that client is
Right.
without making a lot of assumptions because just because they're from a certain part of the world and a certain culture, that doesn't mean they go into a box.
No, but yeah, so I remember when I lived in Australia, one of my clients had a number of offices in Asia. I didn't travel there much, but we had a lot of their like Zoom classes and stuff. And I was yeah, newer than I am now by far, and kept talking about things like self-authorship and self-agency, and a lot of the participants were just like, "What? Why would I want that?" Because
Yeah.
their culture is not wired that way. It's a very American thing, and some degree British and Australian thing, but and so it doesn't mean we have to be up on everything. It just means to be aware of in this moment. And like, for example, like one of my biggest things I track in coaching, and in fact, in some ways, it's the only thing I track, is what is this human ready for right now? Nothing else is interesting to me. And so a lot of coaches get really excited because, oh, ooh, I see, I know what I can do. But the person has just realized this for the first time in 47 years. They're not ready to work on it yet. They've barely even absorbed that it's true about them. And so I'm going to have the maturity, the social maturity to say, in this particular environment that we're in right now, where this person's had a oh my God moment, is not the time to build objectives or goals to go fix it, right? It's the wrong environment for that. And so you may have great skills in those things, but if you don't have the maturity to go with them, you're either going to derail the conversation, alienate the client, waste a lot of time, whatever. And so this one's really important to help you between your self-regulation and your mutual regulation, being able to continue to flow with what's being asked of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also why when I used to do a lot of traveling before the pandemic and did demonstrations, why they were rarely more than 10 minutes. Because I said most of you waste a lot of time asking questions that for which might be interesting, but are not central to what they actually are ready to do something about right now. You're gathering too much information because there's an implicit expectation for many of them that they need to understand everything that's going on so they can be helpful.
Mm.
And my argument was, no, you don't. Um,
Mm.
and, and in a world now where we're even more overwhelmed than we were before, we have even less attention span
Mm.
and less emotional resilience. And so all the more reason to keep what we're working on small and right-sized for where they are right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Does this, David, does this, these five, what do you call them? Gates? Is that what you said? Gate?
No, these are all the maturities and the
These are
gates
the
are these
maturities.
are the maturities and the masteries.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I can show you the gates on the next page, but
So, I'm, I'm wondering about, um, s- like when you first sit with somebody with, as a coach,
mhm.
is there a point of entry where you're saying, tell me why you're here, kind of thing? Like, and
Mm,
then using that to sort of get a sense of what, what
um,
the person is ready for, wanting, or is that too focused
it's too
of a way of
focused.
thinking about it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, contrary to like ICF, we don't tend to set agendas in narrative coaching because, in my experience, no one knows why they're really there.
Mhm.
Neither them or us. They may have a burning platform. They may have something that they want to talk about, but what that really will lead to, we don't know yet. And so,
Mhm.
this is part of the universal pattern. So these five
Mhm.
maturities and masteries also map the five phases of narrative coaching. So the first one is really, we just call it situate. Situate
Mhm.
yourself in this moment in time as a client with me. Come to relax, trust yourself, trust me, trust this process, see what wants
Mhm.
to emerge.
Mhm.
And we meet them exactly where they are. We don't try to change anything or understand anything yet. Um, and along the way, if we do this well and they trust, they start to access more in themselves. Well, I
Mhm.
came here to talk about these problems I'm having with my team, and they realize that's because that's a safer topic. As I sit with this and I hear myself talking, because you're not interrupting with all these coaching questions, you're just listening to me. I'm realizing I think I'm in over my head, and I want to go back to being a contributor. This is too much for me. So we could have wasted an entire session or more sessions on trying to help them be a better team leader, but that's the wrong conversation.
Yeah.
And so then we send them on this journey, and the journey I want going to with the model is it takes us through these five
Mhm.
phases. We call it something else in the narrative coaching model, but it's the exact same flow with the exact same sort of focal points in each of the phases. Mm. And so what I realized, because I've been wanting for some time to teach the five gates pieces. Let me just get, yeah. So let me go back one. So each of the pairs. So initiation sessions about the maturity itself and your reflections on yourself. Then we say uh, what grieving might need to happen for you to open up more possibility for spiritual maturity. And so every transition opens up more doing the work of that threshold. And
Mhm.
so yeah, and so what you'll get in this round of the retreat is I'm putting more resources in the community for you to read about these things in case they're new for you.
Mhm.
Um, but so the grief work then allows us to deepen our capacity in being. If you've never like grieved a big loss in your life, you're
Mhm.
not going to be very useful for clients who are experiencing loss.
Mhm.
You just won't have the maturity to hold their space for that. Attachment is really interesting because a lot of what blinds us to all of us to what we don't see or lack of clarity, I can attribute some to attachment patterns because there's things we can't afford to look at. It's not.
Mhm.
And so part of our spiritual maturity is coming to feel more secure, more grounded in the earth, more connected with the sky, all kinds of things, to allow us to actually feel safe enough to see.
Mhm.
And I believe a lot of our blindness comes from things we couldn't afford to look at during difficult times as children, about like who our parents really were, or what our brother really did, or whatever. So, and then the threshold and the trauma work. we call it both. I've now settled on trauma, but this was from before. But that work in each case is one of the things I've observed over the years, some of the things we got good at, particularly ones that are kind of rote, are often compensations for things that were difficult before. Like I'm really good at managing uh, crises. I'm very calm under pressure, which I consider a great competency, and it comes in very handy. But it also means I often mute some of my own deeper emotions. It often means I get called on to help other people. It often means I burn myself out because I can do this so easily, I imagine. And so part of the trauma work is to say, what if you just put down that familiar sword that you've carried all your life? Just put it down for right now. And let's explore like, when do you first remember holding this sword? And why were you the one that carried it so long, even when it's too heavy? And so then we do some work there to kind of help round out some of the competencies. The capability is my observation is that our ability to sense our environment as a somatic experience, not a cognitive one so much. And so we do a lot of body work in this one to help you increase your sensing capacity for your environment. And then lastly, shadow work is great here. I love this one because at the end of this journey, you're going to discover things you would like to do differently. It's going to take energy you don't have access to right now. Otherwise, you'd already be doing this. So, for example, you might decide, I've been working for other people all my life, or I've been following other people all my life. I want to chart my own course. I want to, make my own path. Well, but you've put into your own shadow the bully, the narcissist, the egomaniac, all the things that not about behavior, but in terms of energy to help you fulfill this thing you've now discovered you want to be doing. And if you try, and which is why we don't set goals, because the person who set the goal, is not the person who gets to the end and is ready to fulfill the goal. They will become a different person in getting ready to and then accomplishing the goal. And so we want to be able to say, what would you need in order to allow yourself to be able to do that? So,
Mm.
yeah. So we just move in this sort of wave between the maturities and the Gates elements to kind of help each person kind of go on the journey they most need to be on.
David, do you find that the issue that some, let's say, brings up at the beginning as they go through changes to something different or potential, or it could just evolve?
So just like I was saying before about, let me just stop sharing. What I was saying before about narrative coaching, we invite them to name something in the beginning, but we encourage them not to stay attached to that
Right,
because it changes over time what it really is, because you're only seeing it from the lens of the first maturity,
right. Okay.
like an
That
inward
makes sense.
looking. And then you start looking at, well, how do I tend to relate to other people? Oh, that's different than how I see myself. I tend to default to doing this. Hmm. And so what we find, and it's not sort of traditionally Western or linear that you're naming things along the way, you're ticking things off. It's really like floating down the river. And
Okay.
then you get to the end and think, wow, that was an amazing day. But wow, I'm over here now.
Yeah.
And then we help them deconstruct. And so this year, well, in this retreat and then going forward, we've added 3 additional sessions at the end to do more to support integration because you won't recognize what happened when you're done. And we want you to be able to recognize what happened while you're still within our container, not off on your own, so we can support you. That's
Right.
why we built in these extra 3 weeks of sessions to help you start to integrate.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it's similar to the narrative coaching that we had done um, where you introduce the topic and then there's work done the very first week, second week by the people who have enrolled, and then there's the implementation. So I think it's like introduction, and then there's a week where we work on our own readings and stuff, and then the third week is you do some work on implementation. Is that
It's
is that what you
kind of
do?
like that. It's the same basic elements. It's a little bit different. So it is still a 4 week cycle. So when I'm gonna, again, one of the what we learned this go round is led me to I will make a small recording at the end of each section, each cycle
Right.
with some of the content. So you have that as backdrop, particularly if it's new for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And then we'll have a group session, and I lead all of these. So a group session on the maturity itself. But again, most of that, I'm not teaching you hardly anything. I'm just giving you some frames for conversation and reflection.
Right.
Then
Okay.
and so we're trying to do this in a way to model my interpretation of Kolb and others. So it matches a flow of what people need as they learn. So in the second week, you will be able to meet in a pod of small group to process the journey you've started on that
Hmm.
particular cycle. The third week, you'll come back and we'll look at the threshold. So now you're kind of in it. So what are you bumping up against? What are you struggling with? What are you like realizing? And this gives some language and framing about what's it asking of you. And then you go off and you do a kind of a small assignment on your own to really own it and make it yours. Um, yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
So I think I'm hearing the training is kind of a mixture of the larger group and and smaller pods where
Yes,
the conversation's more intimate, more
yes.
yeah.
And we do them by geography, so you make it easier in terms of time zones.
Okay.
And yeah, and there are a number of there's assignments that we offer. You're not obligated to do any of them, but we encourage you to use the ones that you like to kind of say, what does this mean for me practically? Like, where does this feel important to me right now?
Mm,
Um, but again, this is not about teaching you about shadow work. We will do some together. It's really as your sense of what's unfolding for you, people discover what that is at various points in the process. How would shadow work help you to
mm,
to incarnate some energy that you might want to push away right now?
mm,
And yeah, yeah. And so what we find, I've done some smaller things. I know, I think Helen, you were in the lighten your load small thing we did late last year, and that was only about the maturities, and it was Trump had just been elected, so everybody's like just completely freaking out, and so we had like 83 people come. It was just amazing, um, but
mm,
it it was only on the maturities. I thought for what it was, it worked really well because it's very
mm,
simple, straightforward. But as you get into these heavier issues, then having the threshold work with the gates gives
mm,
some language and a focus to like,
mm.
what's really my way to move forward here? What am I not
Yeah,
seeing, for example?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
It's
does that give you a clear
really,
picture of our ecosystem, Michelle? And
say again, sorry.
does that help you find some clarity for you in terms of our
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just really rich and deep and wide
ecosystem?
is kind of how it's affecting me and that makes me feel really excited
Yeah,
because I don't want a formula. I'm not,
no,
I'm not ready for that at this end of my
no, no.
career. I
It,
remember though
it,
when I was young starting, I was like, give me
yeah,
all the formulas I can get. But I feel like I'm much more in a, which I guess developmentally makes sense. I'm just in a
yeah,
place of integration and needing that sort
yeah,
of some new ideas to help move in new places because
yeah.
this is a moment culturally, it's a moment in this country, it's a moment in my life. It's just there's a lot of moments that feel
Hmm.
jangly. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said before, it takes sometimes people a while to realize this, but all the things we offer have one pattern. They just have different languages, different focus points, but it's the same pattern. And so once you get that pattern down, then everything starts to make a lot more sense. And
Yeah.
It's built
Yeah.
largely around a rite of passage from anthropology. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
for being willing to go through that. And I'm assuming all of this is online somewhere, or is this something that we get by joining up the,
Yeah, so when the program starts in on July 15th, I think, so in about 3.5 weeks.
okay,
And so then you have a Circles, they have Circle as our platform, and all of your resources will be in the platform.
okay.
And we probably wouldn't put all of them in because we try to adjust as we go just in case, but so that at least the first half of them will be getting you well into the program, and all will
Hmm.
be available to you. We have a forum there that you can make comments and ask questions. Um,
Hmm.
like I said, you'll have a pod, you'll have some assignments you can choose from. We've got some resource lists for a couple of the topics like shadow that I've taught a lot on for people that want to read more, and I can make recommendations on books and yeah,
Lots of holding. Mm.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just feel like this doesn't feel like humanity's finest hour. And
No.
it's really difficult to imagine,
Yeah.
short of total collapse, how we get out of this and or
Yeah.
move through this. And
Yeah.
part of I live in Amsterdam now. I moved last year
Ah,
from Portland.
wow.
And but
Mm,
part of why I came here is because I mean it has its own issues, but
mm.
people have a deeper appreciation for history. They've been here before
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
know the price they paid for it. So Americans don't have that experience yet, unless you're Native American or First Nation.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
they know this.
Yes. It's in their bones and their blood and their genes from
Yeah,
just, yeah, totally.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but all I could say was, I
Mm,
feel like it's going to require
mm,
enormous maturity. More, so that's why I've kind of moved in this direction.
mm,
Um,
mm.
so, yeah. And
So it sounds like it's a worldwide community. It's not,
it
it's
is. We have, I think,
everywhere.
about 40 some odd countries represented. We
It's incredible.
have a couple thousand people by now, and yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Michelle, I
love it.
did the narrative coaching, and then after that, I did do the lighten your load.
Mm,
Hmm.
I'm not sure if I did anything else, but the the participants are phenomenal,
Yeah.
phenomenal, phenomenal. Like just it's you just see people coming back. Today there we had the BCE, which is let me think, what's it called again?
The
Today,
Beyond Coaching
yeah,
Experience.
Beyond Coaching Experience, which is once a
mm,
month with David for an hour and a half, and
mm,
just the depth of the contributions
Yeah.
is just phenomenal. And you can just see people still coming back because there's that, it's like there's this place where there's so much nourishment and different points of view, and
Yeah.
it's a very
mm,
safe place to share. It's
Hmm.
it's phenomenal. It's probably one of the better courses I've ever taken.
Hmm.
And
mm.
largely I think because it is international,
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
it's even makes it better from my point of
Mm,
view.
mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, it's lovely to hear your story about that, Helen. Like you've been part of the process, and it sounds like
Yeah.
it's a community of
Hmm.
It it
yeah,
really is. It
yeah.
Yeah,
really
and
is.
we're doing a lot for next year
Mm,
to build on that, to give more
mm,
opportunities for people to meet each other, do things together. Yeah,
mm,
and sort of continue to decenter myself and hand more to the faculty so I can show up in the community in other ways, mostly as a writer and a mentor. And
mm,
so I'm looking forward to that and then to see where the next generation of people take all this. So,
mhm.
yeah,
It's exciting.
yeah,
Thank you.
you're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I will
So,
look
David,
for the signing up in July piece. I'm sure that just will come through the emails. Yeah?
Yeah, so you should get
Okay.
an email from Christopher thanking you for coming, and then
Okay.
there'll be a link to sign up right in
Great.
the email.
Thank you, Helen. I'm sorry, Helen. Didn't mean
oh,
to
no
interrupt.
worries. I just want to reiterate, David, the one in January starts January and ends when in June or July?
So we're going to move towards they start in January and July, kind of going forward. So we're
Okay.
gonna offer them twice a year. This one will be because we have a bit of a shorter runway. It's actually has more content than the 6 month one had for the first time, but it's compressed a little bit just because I'm avoiding the holidays at the end of the year. Um,
Right. Okay.
Going forward, they'll kind of expand out a bit more, same amount of sessions, but just spread over a little bit more time.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll take a little break midsummer and mid and end of December between cohorts just to be a break.
Great. That makes sense. Okay. This is really good. I'm really happy I sat in on this because
Yeah,
I do know somewhat about the five maturities, but just to kind of go over it again and just
yeah,
um how everything's kind of pulled together.
yeah. It's really, and it's for me because I've been using this. I have got a whole bunch of things of my move to Amsterdam played out way better and way worse than I imagined, and as big moves often do. And
Yeah.
I've been using this a lot myself when I'm like something seems off, and I say, so which of these I might have to pay attention to? And it just provides, for me, it just provides a really quick shorthand. I
Mm,
just sort of start at the bottom and work my way up and to go, oh, um,
mhm,
yeah. So yeah,
mhm.
and yeah, we're now using it to help coaching associations reimagine professional development and yeah. So
It's a very different uh, framework for what a coach is than what is out there
yes,
in the world. I wish
it
there
is
was a different word. I'm sure you played with that.
my whole career. Yeah,
Yeah.
I realized I wasn't going to fit very well. Coaching was the closest I could come to what I thought I was doing, but I
Mm,
didn't. I wasn't very attracted to most of coaching.
yeah.
So
Well, maybe you're just going to completely re-envision what that even means. So,
well, I mean, I've edited three major. I mean, matter of fact, the most significant textbook in coaching I was a co-editor of, but one of the
Mm,
other two, I was the only specific coaching model that was in the book because it's now I've done so much writing on it and so much study and it's so unique.
mm, mm,
Um, and there's other things now, but back then not. Um,
mm.
yeah, and so I like to on my good days I see myself as an enlightened pragmatist. I try to come from a conscious place, but I do this because it works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna write that down. So I'm sort of lean into that a bit.
yeah,
Like that.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very
Thanks so
much, and I
much.
look forward to having you with us. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I'll see you again soon. Yeah,
All right. Wonderful.
good. Thank you. Nice
Thank
to meet you too, Helen.
Nice to meet you as well, Michelle. Thank you so much, David. It's
You're
awesome.
most welcome.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.